For years, I was the domestic husband ridiculed for my deep care and excellent cooking. However, when my wife remained quiet and her family overstepped for the final time, I left and created something they couldn't undermine. I didn't grow up with a family that understood gratitude. You could cook dinner, drive across state lines, bleed for people, and they'd still look at you like you owed them something. Not just indifference, but a quiet, polished contempt. Like anything you did for them was expected, and anything you didn't do was a personal attack. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that my in-laws weren't any different. But I was. God, I was. Let me rewind. I'm Marcus, 36, quiet, detail-oriented, not a center of attention kind of guy. I work in software engineering, but my real passion? Cooking. I'm talking scratch-made sauces, temperature-precise roasts, and obsessing over spice blends like some men obsess over fantasy football stats. My kitchen is my temple. My knives are better maintained than my car. I met Dana when I was 28. She was confident, charming, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make it brighter just by existing. She had this way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. Like you mattered. I married her 2 years later, convinced I had hit the jackpot. She came from a tight-knit family. That's what she called them. In practice, it was more like a monarchy masquerading as a sitcom. Everyone had roles. Dana was the golden child turned peacekeeper. Her mother, Maureen, was the queen bee who ruled through smiles laced with venom. Her dad, Gary, spoke in statements that started with "back in my day" and ended with veiled superiority. And then there was Brent, Dana's older brother. Brent was a walking stereotype. Used car charisma, failed real estate agent, loud opinions, louder laugh. The kind of guy who called himself a provider, even though his wife worked 2 jobs. Every sentence out of his mouth was either a humble brag or a dig wrapped in frat boy charm. He thought sarcasm was a personality, and grilling a steak made him a chef. And me? I was tolerated. I spent years trying to win them over. Fixing things they couldn't be bothered with, hosting when no one else would, and biting my tongue through countless passive-aggressive digs. Dana always said, "That's just how they are. They don't mean anything by it." But she didn't see the way they looked at me when she wasn't around. The way Maureen would wrinkle her nose at my food, or Brent would make a big show of asking, "Is there anything normal on the menu tonight?" Still, I kept showing up. Then came the dinner. Dana had this dream to host a full family reunion dinner. 14 people. Her parents, Brent, Brent's wife and 2 kids, a few cousins, her aunt who always wore too much perfume. She wanted to create something beautiful. One night of peace, laughter, togetherness. And despite everything, I wanted that too. So I volunteered to cook. Everything. I made handmade tagliatelle, slow-braised short ribs with garlic demi-glace, roasted heirloom carrots with honey thyme glaze, pancetta Brussels sprouts, crusty artisan bread I'd been perfecting for weeks, and a layered tiramisu that took 2 days. Dana helped with the wine pairings and table settings. The house smelled like a magazine spread. Candles flickering, jazz humming in the background. It was perfect. They arrived late, of course. Brent barged in first with his kids yelling behind him, looked around, and said, "Wow, someone's been watching too much Food Network." Gary sniffed the air. "Smells fancy." Maureen hugged Dana and gave me a nod that felt like a participation ribbon. Dinner started fine. People ate. Plates were scraped clean. Brent even asked for seconds. I thought, maybe this time. Maybe they'd see the effort. The love. Maybe I'd finally crossed the invisible line between outsider and family. Then came the moment. I was stacking dishes when Brent walked up, slapped me on the back, and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Every man needs a hobby. Glad you found yours, Marcus." The room erupted in laughter. But it wasn't the friendly kind. It was the mean kind. The kind that punches you in the gut and dares you to act like it hurt. Maureen chimed in, dabbing her lips with a cloth napkin. "He's very domestic, isn't he?" I looked around. Waiting. Anyone? Dana was busy pouring more wine, pretending she didn't hear. Her eyes didn't meet mine. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. It wasn't rage. Not even sadness. It was clarity. I barely remember the rest of the night. There were voices, clinking glasses, and kids screaming about dessert. I washed dishes like a zombie. Dana passed behind me a few times and touched my back once, but said nothing. No apology. No whispered. They didn't mean it. She knew. She had to know. I didn't speak a word until the last guest left. When the door finally shut, the silence felt like an anvil dropped on my chest. Dana was wiping the table with one of those reusable clothes she always swore by. "That went well, right?" she asked like it was a real question. I turned slowly. "Seriously?" She blinked. "I mean, they seemed happy. The food was incredible. You were amazing." Amazing. The same word you use when someone opens a store-bought wine and pours it without spilling. "Did you hear what your brother said?" I asked, my voice low and tight. Her face stiffened. "Marcus, it was a joke." "Right," I said. "A joke." Like when Maureen calls me domestic, or Gary asks if I've considered a career in catering. That kind of joke. She didn't answer, just resumed wiping a spot that wasn't even dirty. I stared at her, wondering how she could still defend them, wondering how many times I had excused the same behavior just to keep the peace. Her peace. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I went to the bedroom, changed into sweats, and sat on the edge of the bed, hands clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just a joke. It was that they all laughed. And it was that she didn't stop them. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't look at her, lying there like nothing had happened. I grabbed my keys and my wallet and drove. I didn't even know where at first. I just needed to breathe somewhere else. Somewhere without polished judgment, polite cruelty, or that god-awful laughter ringing in my ears. I ended up downtown, outside a building I hadn't walked into in over a year, my old shared kitchen studio. Before the pandemic, I used to teach cooking classes there on the weekends. Pasta making, knife skills, and even a couple's wine and sauté class. It had been a side hustle, a sanctuary. The key still worked. The place smelled like garlic, lemons, and old ambition. The walls were lined with pans that gleamed under dim overheads. I stepped inside and let the door fall shut behind me. No questions, no accusations, just silence and stainless steel. I sat at the prep counter, the same place I used to show people how to dice an onion without crying. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel peace in a kitchen. I felt rage. And underneath that, exhaustion. 7 years. 7 years I had poured time, energy, love into people who treated me like the help. Like a quirky sidekick who showed up, performed his little cooking tricks, and then disappeared back into the shadows. They didn't respect me. They tolerated me. And I had let them. I pulled out my phone, opened notes, started typing. I made a list, not of recipes, but of favors. Decks I painted, tires I changed, meals I cooked, tech I fixed, wine I bought, dinners I planned, birthdays I organized, apologies I made that weren't even mine to give. 14 favors for 14 people. I stared at the list. Then I added a title. Things I will never do again. The next few days were quiet. I didn't leave Dana. Not yet. But I didn't sleep in our bed either. I stayed on the couch, claiming back pain, which wasn't a total lie. There's something about the emotional weight that sinks into your muscles. Makes it hurt to just lie still. She brought me tea in the mornings and said things like, "Let me know if you want to talk." But she didn't push. And worse, she didn't apologize. I waited. And she didn't say the words I needed to hear. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." She didn't say, "That was wrong." She just coasted, like time would smooth it over. It didn't. On the fourth day, she sat across from me, mug in hand, hair tied in a loose bun. "I know they can be dismissive," she said, "but they're not going to change, Marcus." I stared at her. Then why am I the one who always has to? She didn't have an answer. That was the exact moment, sitting in our living room, across from the woman I thought was my teammate, that something in me finally locked into place. If I wanted to feel like a person again, not just a tool in someone else's family portrait, I had to do something drastic. Not petty, not loud, but unforgettable. The kind of small you can't see until it's too late. First thing I did, I stopped answering Brent's texts. He messaged 2 days after the dinner. "Yo, bro, that pasta recipe was fire. Can you send it over? Gonna impress some clients this weekend." I left it on read. He followed up with, "Hello?" And then, finally, a classic Brent. "Whatever, man. Guess you don't want me to shine." No big deal. I deleted the thread. Next, I unsubscribed from the family group chat. The one Dana managed, full of half-baked plans and passive-aggressive calendar invites. I didn't announce it, just quietly left. When Dana asked later if I meant to, I just said, yes, and went back to reading. I didn't even pretend anymore. I stopped fixing things. The broken porch light at Maureen's? Not my problem. Is Gary's laptop freezing again? Good luck. I let them sit in silence. No explanations. No excuses. And Dana noticed. She asked one night over dinner, "Are you cutting everyone off?" I chewed my food, swallowed, and said, "No. Just finally respecting my own time." She didn't push. Because I think, deep down, she knew I was right. The next phase wasn't just retreat. It was a rediscovery. I went back to the studio kitchen. I reactivated my teaching profile on the local food app, started booking private classes again. Within a week, I had 3 sessions lined up. Couples, friends, even a corporate team building group. Being back in that space? It was like oxygen. No one was laughing at me there. They were learning from me, asking questions, laughing with me, not at me. And when I plated up food, people clapped. Genuinely. And the kicker? One of my former students reached out. Said she was launching a pop-up dinner series and wanted to partner. Asked if I had any interest in hosting a guest chef night. I said yes. And just like that, the thing they mocked me for became the thing rebuilding my identity. Dana, to her credit, tried to be supportive. She came to one of the classes, sat in the back, smiled at my dumb garlic jokes. Afterward, she said, "You really light up in there. I forgot how much you love this." And for a second, I almost softened. Almost. But then Maureen called. She left a voicemail. Her voice was all sweetness and poisoned sugar. "Marcus, sweetheart, I heard you've been a little distant lately. We're hosting a garden brunch next week. Brent's bringing one of his clients. We'd love for you to cater. You're so good at that sort of thing. Let me know, darling." No offer of payment. No apology. Just an expectation that I'd fall back into place. Like a well-trained butler who'd had his tantrum and was ready to serve again. I played the voicemail for Dana. She looked uncomfortable. "You don't have to," she said quickly. "I know," I said. Then I forwarded the voicemail to Carla. Carla was the pop-up dinner organizer. She was smart, shrewd, and understood branding like nobody else. I asked her if we could use that voicemail in our launch promo somehow. She laughed. "As inspiration or as a literal audio file?" "Inspiration," I said, "but with spice." We started drafting the tagline that night. He was the punchline at family dinners. Now he's the main course. The ad would feature a blurred-out table of laughing relatives, a slow zoom into an empty chair, and then a slam cut to me, plating food in a crisp chef's coat, silent and focused. Revenge was never the plan. But if they insisted on turning me into a caricature, then fine. I'd let them watch me become a bad brand. Update. On the night of the pop-up, I wore black. Black chef's coat, black jeans, black boots. A clean slate. Like I had burned down the old version of myself and was walking into the ashes with a torch in one hand and a sauté pan in the other. Carla booked this stunning brick and glass loft space downtown. Exposed beams, moody industrial lighting, open kitchen with gleaming stainless steel. There were 60 chairs, a long farmhouse table running right down the middle, and the scent of lemon zest and butter warming the air before guests even arrived. It sold out in 2 days. The launch ad? A masterpiece. That tagline, "He was the punchline at family dinners." Now he's the main course. Hit harder than I imagined. We got a little viral traction. Foodies, a few bloggers, and even a regional food critic RSVP'd. Everyone wanted to see the man who'd turned dinner table humiliation into culinary rebellion. I was buzzing. 3 courses. Prepped. Perfect. Lemon herb crostini with whipped goat cheese. Duck confit ravioli and sage brown butter. Espresso panna cotta with dark chocolate curls. It was my soul on a plate, and I was finally serving it to people who weren't just there to tear it apart. Or so I thought. Right after the first course was plated, I stepped out from behind the counter to scan the crowd, and there she was. Maureen, wearing a pearl necklace and a beige cashmere wrap like she was attending a fundraiser. Right beside her, Brent, in a blazer, taking a selfie with his wine glass as he'd just stepped into a Michelin-starred restaurant he definitely didn't belong in. I blinked once. Then again. They bought tickets. Not invited. Not acknowledged. They didn't even tell Dana. They just showed up, like they had the right to see what I'd built from the ashes of their disrespect. My jaw locked, but I didn't stop. If this was a game of control, I was done playing defense. Every plate that went to their table, identical to every other guest's. No spit. No shade. Just surgical indifference. Brent waved once. I ignored it. Maureen tried to mouth, "Lovely job," when I passed. I gave her the same stare I reserved for distant relatives at funerals. They weren't here to support me. They were here to reclaim me. And I wasn't going. The dinner ended in applause. Real applause. Strangers stood. A woman asked for my card. A local food critic slipped me her email with a handwritten note. "We need to talk." I was flying. Then Brent shuffled up with the kind of sheepish grin you only see on men who think charm works better than an apology. "Bro," he said, "that duck? Unreal. You gotta show me that sage trick." "I mean it." I kept wiping my counter. "Glad you're enjoying my hobby," I said, without looking up. He laughed nervously. "Come on, man. That was a joke." It wasn't funny. And I turned away. Maureen stepped up next like a soap opera villain entering her final scene. "Marcus, darling, what a beautiful night. We're so proud. Dana must be thrilled." And there it was. Dana. She wasn't there. Hadn't shown up. She'd RSVP'd weeks ago, helped me brainstorm wine pairings, and even texted me that morning with "You're going to kill it tonight." But she wasn't in the room. No call. No excuse. Just a text an hour before the start time that read, "I think you need this night for yourself." At first, I told myself it was support. She didn't want to make it about her. But seeing her family there, smiling, posing, claiming while she stayed home, I finally understood. She didn't want to take a side. So she didn't show up at all. And I wasn't angry. I was done. I got home around midnight. The city was quiet. That eerie, humming kind of quiet that lets you hear your own thoughts a little too clearly, like a spotlight on every decision you've made and every word you didn't say. The house was dark except for the glow of a lamp in the living room. Dana was curled up on the couch in an oversized blanket, phone resting on her chest like she'd fallen asleep mid-scroll. But she wasn't sleeping. She was pretending. I stood in the entryway for a moment. Let the stillness hang. Maybe give her the chance to say something first. She didn't move. So I broke the silence. You didn't come. Her eyes opened slowly. Like she wanted me to think she was surprised. Like she hadn't been sitting there for hours rehearsing this. I didn't want to make it about me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I dropped my keys on the hallway table and kicked off my shoes. You knew they'd be there. She sat up. No, Marcus, I didn't. I swear, they didn't say anything to me. But you weren't surprised. She didn't answer. Maureen and Brent walked in like they owned the place. Sat front and center. Brent was taking selfies like he was the guest of honor. You mean to tell me you didn't see that coming? I thought it was your night, she said. I didn't want to cause drama. I laughed. Not a real laugh. That bitter kind that tastes like copper and disappointment. No, Dana. You didn't want to choose. She flinched. I stepped closer, my voice low and even. You've spent our entire marriage playing referee. Every snide comment, every backhanded compliment, you smooth it over. You explain it away. That's just how they are. They didn't mean it. You've been translating their cruelty for so long that you've forgotten how to hear it. She looked at the floor. I needed you tonight, I said. Not as a cheerleader. Not to pour wine or smile for Instagram. Just to show up. Just to stand next to me while I finally stood up for myself. Dana sat down slowly on the couch. I'm sorry, she whispered. That was it. Not, I get it now. Not, I should have been there. Just, I'm sorry. And that's when I knew she still didn't get it. I stood there in the hallway for a moment, just looking at her, wrapped in that blanket like it might protect her from the truth sitting in the air between us. I'm going to stay at the studio for a few days, I said. Her head snapped up. Wait, Marcus. I'm not leaving, I said. Not yet. But I need space. I need to remember what it feels like to be in a room where I'm not constantly bracing for impact. She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then closed it. I walked into the bedroom, packed a duffel bag. Just clothes. Laptop. A couple of books. The basics. When I came back out, she was still sitting there. Same position. Same silence. But I knew the air had shifted. And as I closed the door behind me, stepping back out into the cool midnight air, I realized something. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry. I felt clean, as I had finally rinsed off the grease of their approval I'd been scrubbing toward for years. Update. 3 days. That's how long it took before someone cracked. I was staying at the studio kitchen. Carla let me crash on the fold-out couch in the back office, not exactly luxury, but honestly, it was the best sleep I'd had in months. No fake smiles. No eggshells. No hovering tension. Just the hum of refrigeration units and the gentle clatter of prep knives. The kind of silence that makes your soul breathe again. I cooked for myself. Not for approval. Not for anyone else's palate. Just for the joy of it. A perfect risotto. Grilled mushrooms with garlic butter. Slow-poached eggs on toast. I wasn't performing. I was remembering who I was before they wore me down. Then came the text. Maureen. Marcus, darling. We're all very concerned. Dana hasn't been herself. Can we please talk? I didn't reply. Then Gary. Son, you're still part of this family. We need to sit down. Work through this. The man had barely spoken to me in years without correcting my tone or explaining what I was doing wrong. Suddenly, I was blocked. Then came Dana. Her messages were less direct, more like gentle raindrops that hoped I'd open the window, thinking about you. Let me know if you want to talk. I miss you. But never. I'm sorry. Not once. On the 4th day, I opened the studio door to find Brent standing outside holding a pie. You've got to be kidding me, I said flatly. He smiled like he was the protagonist in a low-budget sitcom. Dana told me you were here. Said you weren't answering. Thought I'd drop by. It's an apple. Your favorite, right? I didn't step aside. What do you want, Brent? He shifted his weight. Look, man, we all say dumb stuff sometimes. Are you disappearing? It's got everyone rattled. Dana's a mess. She should be, I said. He blinked like I'd slapped him. I'm not coming back because of a pie, I added. Or because you suddenly realized I exist outside of your punchlines. He laughed, but he was nervous now. Okay, but don't you think you're being a little dramatic? There it was. That word. Dramatic. The word they used to dismiss every valid feeling I ever had. I tilted my head. You mocked me for years. You laughed at me in my own home, at my table. You called my work a hobby. And now I draw a line, and I'm dramatic. He took a half step back. We're family, he offered weakly. I stepped forward. No, Brent. You just liked having someone around you didn't have to respect. His mouth opened, but I didn't give him the chance. I shut the door. Hard. And outside, I heard the pie hit the ground. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt free. After that, I turned off my phone, changed my passwords, set up a second number for work and Carla only. Then I opened my laptop and did something I should have done years ago. I launched a newsletter. Marcus Cooks from scratch. I wrote the first post like a letter to myself. No drama. No names. Just a story about a man who stopped waiting to be appreciated and started telling his own story. I shared recipes, thoughts on food, and behind-the-scenes moments from the pop-up. I hit send with zero expectations. Within a week, I had 900 subscribers. People were listening. Not because I married into their world. Not because I smiled through insults. Not because I cooked their dinners for free. Because I had something to say. And for the first time in my life, that was enough. A week after the newsletter hit 1,500 subscribers, Dana showed up at the studio. She looked tired. Worn down in that quiet way only guilt can manage. She didn't knock. Just stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. I was plating leftovers, mushroom risotto, and seared scallops. Something simple. Something that calmed me. She said, "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. But I didn't stop her either. She sat across from me at the prep table. Her hands were in her lap like a student about to be scolded. "I read the newsletter," she said. I kept arranging scallops. "I've read every entry. Even the one about the crostini," she added with a weak smile. "You always said lemon zest was your secret weapon." Still, I didn't speak. Because this time, she needed to. "I should have been there," Dana said. "At the dinner. At the pop-up. Everywhere." I let her words settle. Heavy. Honest. I wanted to keep peace. But all I did was make silence a prison. I looked up then. There were tears in her eyes. "I can't ask you to come back. I wouldn't if I were you. But I want to say this, at least once and clearly. You were right. About all of it." I pushed the plate toward her. "Eat," I said. She blinked. "Is this forgiveness?" "No," I replied. "It's food. One thing I never did with resentment." She took a bite. Closed her eyes. "It's perfect." When she finished, she stood. Wiped her face. "Goodbye, Marcus." And for once, she left without waiting to be followed. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've catered 5 private events, signed a small deal with a local winery, and co-hosted a dinner series with Carla that sold out twice over. I moved into a tiny loft above a used bookstore. My kitchen's half the size of our old one, but every inch is mine. The knives are sharp. The pans are seasoned. The silence is golden. Brent tried texting again. I didn't open it. Maureen sent a holiday card with a Bible verse and no signature. I recycled it. Gary sent nothing. Which, honestly, was the most honest thing any of them ever did. Sometimes I think about what it means to walk away. Not out of spite, but because healing requires it. Because some people don't deserve front row seats to your growth after they booed during your building. And sometimes, yes, I miss Dana. Or maybe I missed who I thought she was. But mostly, I'm proud. Proud that I didn't scream. Proud that I didn't serve them revenge on a silver platter. I simply took myself off the menu. And for once, that was more than enough. My opinion. Marcus's story is about the quiet unraveling of tolerance and the courageous reconstruction of identity. He didn't lash out. He didn't set fire to bridges. He just stepped off them, one by one, until he found solid ground beneath his own feet. His journey shows that some betrayals aren't explosive, they're slow, hollowing. But when the final snap happens, it's not rage that follows, it's freedom. His growth didn't need an audience. It just needed a plate, a pause, and a man who finally realized he was never anyone's servant. He was the main course all along. So tell me this, if your worth is always an afterthought at their table, would you finally stop cooking for them? Would you walk away from everything just to finally taste peace? Would you still call them family if they never once made you feel like you belonged?